Behind the serene face, wrapped in a white sari, lies one of the deepest paradoxes of modern spirituality. To the world, Mother Teresa was the embodiment of compassion, a woman who touched the untouchable, loved the dying, and gave dignity to the forgotten. But within her heart raged an invisible storm, decades of darkness, doubt, and a haunting sense of God's absence. She walked the streets of Calcutta not as a saint basking in divine light, but as a wounded soul choosing love even when faith felt like ashes. Her greatness did not come from her certainty, but from her persistence, a stubborn, radiant act of devotion that turned suffering into service, silence into prayer, and loneliness into love for the world.
Before she became a symbol of mercy in the slums of Calcutta, she was simply Agnes Gonja Bojaju, a little girl growing up in the quiet streets of Skopje, a city now in North Macedonia. Born into a modest Albanian family in 1910, her early years were marked by faith, tragedy, and resilience. Her father's mysterious death when she was just 8 years old plunged the family into hardship, but also awakened in her a fierce inner strength. The local Jesuit priests, the hymns sung in church, and her mother's quiet acts of charity formed the soil from which her compassion grew. Few remember that before India, before sainthood, there was Skopje, the humble birthplace of a girl whose small acts of love would one day echo across the entire world.
It was 1946, and Sister Teresa was traveling by train from Calcutta to Darjeeling for a retreat. Outside, the Indian countryside rolled by. Inside, she sat in silence, a silence that would soon change her life forever. In that stillness, she heard what she later described as the call within a call. It wasn't a voice of thunder, but an interior summons, a command of love. She felt Christ asking her to leave the convent walls and go into the streets, to serve the poorest of the poor, not as a teacher behind a desk, but as a mother among the dying and forgotten. In that moment of quiet revelation, her destiny shifted. The safe path of the nun became the dangerous, luminous road of a saint. What began as a train ride became a turning point for humanity, a whisper in the soul that birthed a revolution of compassion.
When Mother Teresa stepped onto the streets of Calcutta, she entered a world that most people tried to forget. The air was thick with heat and sorrow, bodies lay in gutters, children begged for crumbs, and the dying were left alone to fade into the noise of the city. She had no money, no shelter, and no organization behind her, only faith. Dressed in a simple white sari with a blue border, she walked among the outcasts, learning their names, touching their wounds, and seeing in every face the suffering Christ. Her classroom became the slums, her altar the dirt roads of the poor. She taught not with words, but with actions, lifting the dying from the streets, washing them with her own hands, whispering prayers as they took their final breaths. In those narrow lanes where despair ruled, compassion took flesh, and in the heart of chaos, a quiet revolution began, one act of mercy at a time.
For Mother Teresa, love was never an emotion. It was a discipline, a deliberate act of the will. She often said, "Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action." In her hands, compassion became a science, precise, repeatable, measurable not in theories, but in wounds healed and dignity restored. Each bandaged hand, each cup of rice, Each smile offered to the forgotten was a living experiment in the transformation of the soul through service. She believed that the smallest act of kindness carried divine weight. We can all not do great things, she said, but we can do small things with great love. To her, washing the sores of a dying man was as sacred as prayer, because both were ways of touching God. In a world obsessed with efficiency and recognition, she taught the metaphysics of humility, that true greatness lies in becoming invisible while love does the work. For Mother Teresa, service was not social work, it was spiritual alchemy. Love, when acted upon, turns suffering into grace.
Behind the glowing image of sainthood, Mother Teresa carried a secret cross, a silence so deep it lasted for nearly half a century. In her private letters, revealed only after her death, she confessed that she could no longer feel the presence of God. The woman who spoke endlessly of divine love felt abandoned by the very one she served. "Where is my faith?" she wrote. "Even deep down, there is nothing but emptiness and darkness. My God, how painful is this unknown pain?" This silence did not break her faith, it purified it. Instead of retreating from the world, she leaned further into it. She kissed the dying, fed the hungry, and continued her mission even when heaven itself seemed closed. Her darkness became a hidden prayer, a silent companionship with all who suffer in doubt and loneliness. For 50 years, she lived what mystics call the dark night of the soul, a spiritual desert where love survives without reward, where belief becomes pure endurance. Her smile in public was not hypocrisy, it was courage. Beneath it, she wrestled with the mystery of faith stripped bare, a faith that serves not because it feels God, but because it has chosen Him, even in His absence.
Mother Teresa's greatest act of faith was not the founding of her order, nor the countless lives she touched. It was her ability to love God when she could no longer feel Him. For most believers, faith is sustained by emotion, the warmth of prayer, the comfort of divine presence. But for her, that comfort vanished. For decades, she felt only silence, no visions, no voice, no consolation. And yet, she continued to serve the poorest of the poor with unwavering devotion. Her faith became something entirely different, not a feeling, but a decision. To love God without reward, to believe without proof, to keep walking when the light has gone out. This was the faith of fire refined into pure will. She once wrote, "If I ever become a saint, I will surely be one of darkness." In that darkness, she found a strange kind of truth, that love does not depend on what we receive, but on what we give, even when the heart feels empty. Her life teaches a paradox. The holiest faith may not be the one that feels closest to God, but the one that continues to love Him through His silence.
For Mother Teresa, suffering was never meaningless. She saw it as a bridge between the human and the divine, a secret opportunity to unite one's own pain with the suffering of Christ. In the faces of the dying, the lepers, and the destitute, she perceived a living testament to God's presence in the brokenness of the world. She believed that when we endure pain with love, it transforms, not into despair, but into grace. Every wound washed, every tear shared, every hand held was an act of participation in a higher purpose. Suffering, to her, was not something to escape, but a doorway into deeper compassion and spiritual awakening. Her radical embrace of human misery challenged the world's instinct to flee from pain. She taught that the true measure of holiness is not comfort, but courage. The courage to enter the darkness of suffering fully and lovingly, turning every moment of agony into an altar of mercy. In Mother Teresa's vision, pain was not the enemy of God's love, it was its secret language. Mother Teresa's compassion was not sentimental. It was profoundly psychological and deeply intentional. She understood that true love requires proximity, the willingness to enter the world of those whom society rejects, to touch what others recoil from, and to see humanity in the most broken. The dying, the lepers, the untouchables, they were not objects of pity, but mirrors reflecting the divine spark in every soul. By embracing them, she trained herself to see beyond fear, disgust, and social prejudice. Each act of care became a conscious exercise in empathy, breaking down the walls of separation that isolate human beings from one another. Her psychology of compassion rested on a paradox. To love fully, one must expose oneself to suffering. By willingly confronting poverty, disease, and death, she expanded the capacity of her own heart. Through this radical intimacy, Mother Teresa showed that mercy is not merely emotion, but a deliberate cultivation of presence, courage, and unwavering attention to the dignity of every life. In every touch and every word, she taught that compassion is both a spiritual practice and a psychological transformation, the alchemy that turns human weakness into sacred connection.
Mother Teresa's life, while celebrated worldwide, was not without scrutiny. Critics questioned her methods, her strict adherence to poverty, and the quality of medical care in her homes for the dying. Some argued that her emphasis on suffering glorified pain rather than alleviating it, or that her political associations and fundraising strategies were ethically complex. Yet these controversies reveal a deeper truth. Sainthood is rarely comfortable or simple. Mother Teresa existed in the tension between ideal and reality, between divine vision and human imperfection. Her radical choices, living in poverty, embracing the destitute, and prioritizing spiritual care over modern medical standards, challenged a world obsessed with efficiency and measurable outcomes. The paradox of her life lies here. She was both saint and human, venerated and questioned, unwavering in devotion, yet enigmatic in her suffering. In the modern world where morality is often reduced to practicality, her life reminds us that true holiness is rarely neat, often misunderstood, and sometimes controversial, because it demands a radical commitment that transcends ordinary expectations.
In a world that measures success by wealth, influence, and recognition, Mother Teresa offered a radical alternative: greatness through humility and service. She wielded no political power, owned no property, and sought no personal acclaim. Yet her impact was immeasurable, reaching millions, shaping hearts, and inspiring generations. For her, true power was not control over others, but the ability to give oneself completely. Poverty was not a limitation, but a lens to see the divine in every human being. By stripping away the trappings of status and comfort, she revealed that the most profound authority comes from love freely given. Mother Teresa redefined greatness as a life of selfless presence, where the measure of a person is not their possessions or accolades, but the depth of compassion they extend to the forgotten, the suffering, and the marginalized. In her example, power and poverty became inseparable allies, a paradox that challenges every notion of worldly success.
For decades, Mother Teresa kept a private correspondence with God that the world would not see until after her death. These letters, raw and unfiltered, unveiled a side of her that few could imagine, a soul in constant dialogue with doubt, darkness, and spiritual desolation. She wrote of feeling abandoned, unheard, and empty, of nights when prayer seemed like speaking into a void. Yet she did not cease serving. In fact, these hidden words reveal a paradox at the heart of her sanctity. Her deepest struggles fueled her greatest acts of love. Through these letters, she teaches that holiness is not the absence of pain or doubt, but the courage to continue faithfully despite them. Each sentence is a testament of endurance, a private testament of a human heart wrestling with God while touching the lives of countless others. In her silence, despair became devotion. In her darkness, light flowed to the world.
Mother Teresa's vision was not limited to personal devotion. She created a global movement rooted in radical simplicity and total surrender. The Missionaries of Charity began with just a handful of sisters living in poverty, wearing nothing but a simple white sari with a blue border, and dedicating themselves entirely to serving the poorest of the poor. Every rule, every vow, and every act was designed to strip away distractions and ego, focusing solely on the service of God through love for humanity. There were no brand offices, no luxurious accommodations, no personal ambitions, only the discipline of presence, humility, and mercy. Through this simplicity, the movement transcended cultural and national boundaries, proving that profound change does not require wealth or power, but radical commitment and unwavering compassion. Mother Teresa transformed small acts into a global ethos, showing the world that simplicity can be revolutionary and love can be the most powerful force of all.
For Mother Teresa, charity was never just about giving food, money, or comfort. It was a living philosophy, a secret act that transformed both giver and receiver. She saw every gesture, no matter how small, as a conduit for divine love. A spoonful of rice, a gentle touch, a whispered prayer became metaphysical acts, bridging the human and the divine. Her vision revealed that love is not an abstract ideal, but a concrete force expressed in the minutiae of daily life. To serve a dying patient, to hold a trembling child, to comfort the abandoned, each was an exercise in holiness, a sacrament of presence and attention. Through her example, Mother Teresa taught that the ordinary can become extraordinary when infused with love. In her hands, compassion became a kind of alchemy, turning mundane acts into portals of grace. She showed the world that the ultimate spirituality is not in grand gestures or lofty words, but in the persistent, attentive, and loving care of every human being we encounter.
Mother Teresa embodied a unique synthesis of strength and gentleness, revealing the feminine dimension of holiness in a world that often equates power with aggression. Her courage was quiet but unyielding, a determination to confront suffering, poverty, and injustice without force, relying instead on tenderness, patience, and presence. In every act of care, she demonstrated that vulnerability could be a source of power. To cradle the dying, to soothe the frightened,
To forgive without hesitation, these were not signs of weakness, but profound expressions of moral courage. Her life redefined what it means to be strong. True strength, she showed, is the ability to act decisively while remaining compassionate, to lead through love rather than fear, and to challenge the world not with domination, but with mercy. Through her example, holiness took on a distinctly feminine face, resilient, nurturing, and transformative.
Beneath the visible acts of service, Mother Teresa lived a profound inner mysticism, one that most of the world never saw. Her decades of spiritual darkness were not mere absence of feeling, but a crucible in which her soul learned to embrace God through emptiness. In the silence of her heart, where consolation and presence were absent, she discovered that union with the divine does not depend on emotional experience. True intimacy with God, she realized, comes through surrender, humility, and the willing acceptance of emptiness. By offering herself fully, without expectation, she became a vessel through which divine love could flow unimpeded. Her mysticism was hidden because it was lived, not proclaimed. In the paradox of emptiness, she found plenitude, proving that spiritual richness often emerges not from feeling God's presence, but from choosing love and service when all seems absent. Through this hidden mysticism, her life became a silent liturgy of devotion and surrender.
For Mother Teresa, death was never an abstract concept or a distant event. It was a living presence she faced daily. In the eyes of the dying, in the thin bodies abandoned in alleys, she saw the reflection of Christ himself. Each moment with the dying became a sacred encounter, a chance to minister not just to flesh, but to the soul. She taught that to truly serve God, one must not fear death, but meet it with compassion and reverence. Holding hands, whispering prayers, and offering simple comforts, she transformed the final moments of life into acts of profound dignity and sacred intimacy. In this constant confrontation with mortality, Mother Teresa revealed a radical truth: loving the dying is the highest form of devotion. Through their suffering, she glimpsed the divine, and through her care, the world witnessed the sacredness hidden in life's most fragile and fleeting moments.
Mother Teresa's sanctity was forged not in comfort, but in the tension between faith and doubt. For decades, she wrestled privately with a profound sense of spiritual absence, a darkness that left her praying without feeling, loving without consolation, and serving without visible reward. This inner trial was a crucible of holiness. While many would have abandoned prayer or retreated from service, she pressed on, choosing obedience and love over the need for certainty or emotional affirmation. Her struggle reveals a hidden dimension of sainthood, that true devotion often exists not in the presence of God's reassurance, but in the courage to act faithfully when God feels absent. In the paradox of her life, doubt became a silent companion to faith, sharpening her spiritual vision. She taught the world that holiness is not the absence of struggle, but the perseverance to love, serve, and believe even when the soul is in shadow. Mother Teresa's journey between faith and doubt transforms the understanding of spiritual endurance into a living testament of human and divine resilience.
Mother Teresa's image as the gentle, loving saint was amplified and sometimes distorted by global media. Newspapers, television, and later documentaries portrayed her as a flawless icon of compassion, a symbol so powerful that the complexity of her humanity was often overlooked. Behind the myth was a woman of paradoxes. She was fiercely disciplined, sometimes blunt,
and privately tormented by spiritual darkness. The public image emphasized serenity and holiness, but rarely conveyed the internal struggles, doubts, and the rigorous demands she placed upon herself and her followers. This disparity reveals a profound truth. Sainthood and celebrity are not the same. While the world celebrated her, few understood the hidden labor of the soul required to maintain faith and compassion in the face of relentless suffering. Mother Teresa's life reminds us that public adoration can simplify the profound, and that true sanctity often exists in the shadows, far from applause.
Mother Teresa's canonization in 2016 sparked admiration, debate, and reflection on what it truly means to be a saint. Beyond the ceremonies and titles, sainthood raises a deeper question. Is it the miracles, the fame, or the acts of service that elevate a person to holiness? Or is it the interior life, the hidden struggles, and the unwavering commitment to love in spite of darkness? Her canonization reminds us that sanctity is not measured by comfort, reward, or even public recognition. It is measured by fidelity to one's calling, to the suffering of others, and to a moral vision that transcends self-interest. Mother Teresa exemplified this in the quiet, painful choices she made every day, choosing compassion over ease, service over security, and faith over certainty. To honor her canonically is to honor a life lived with radical love, courage in the face of doubt, and the profound truth that holiness is forged in perseverance, humility, and unwavering commitment to humanity and God alike.
Mother Teresa's life offers a timeless lesson. True love does not seek recognition, reward, or reciprocation. Every act of care she performed, tending the dying, feeding the hungry, comforting the abandoned, was offered freely, without expectation of thanks or acknowledgement. Her radical example challenges a world obsessed with outcomes and self-interest. She showed that love in its purest form is an act of courage, a deliberate choice to serve others even when it brings no fame, no material gain, and no visible consolation. In doing so, she transformed ordinary deeds into extraordinary expressions of divine grace. Mother Teresa teaches that the highest form of human fulfillment comes not from accumulation, prestige, or achievement, but from the selfless devotion to others. In her life, we see that the measure of love is not in what we receive, but in what we give, and that true holiness is revealed in the quiet, relentless service performed for its own sake.